January 14th, 2019, Melbourne Park. Andy Murray walks to the baseline for the last time. He stops, raises his racket to 15,000 people, and they rise. Not because he won, because they know he's done. Then, in a press conference, tears streaming down his face, he says 7 words that will define the next 5 years of his life. Maybe I'll see you again. 3 Grand Slams, world number 1, 2 Olympic gold medals, and he couldn't walk to his car without pain. What happened between that press conference and the Paris Olympics in 2024 is not a comeback story. It's a case study in what the human body can survive and what the human mind refuses to accept. Let's establish exactly who Andy Murray was before the hip destroyed him. 41 weeks at world number 1, 46 ATP titles, 3 Grand Slam championships, Wimbledon 2013, US Open 2012, Wimbledon 2016. The only player in the history of professional tennis to win 2 Olympic singles gold medals, London 2012, Rio 2016. He didn't just compete against Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic. He beat them repeatedly, at the highest level, on the biggest stages. And then, by 2018, he was walking with a visible limp. Not after matches, before them. He was waking up at 3 a.m. because the pain wouldn't let him sleep. Every step on a tennis court was a negotiation between his brain and a hip joint that was disintegrating beneath him. Here is the paradox that this video is built on. How does a man with a crumbling hip, who has already had 1 failed surgery, stand in front of 15,000 people in Melbourne and say, "Maybe I'll see you again," and then actually mean it? This is the part of the story that most people don't know. Murray didn't wake up one morning in 2019 with a bad hip. The deterioration had been happening for years, and for years, he hid it. Not from the media, from his coaches, from his team, from his family. He was competing at the top of professional tennis while managing a level of pain that most people would consider disqualifying from normal daily life. The limp was visible on court. Commentators mentioned it. Opponents noticed it. Murray kept playing. He had already attempted arthroscopic surgery, a less invasive procedure designed to clean up the joint and reduce inflammation. It failed. The hip continued to deteriorate. By late 2018, the medical reality was stark. The only remaining option was Birmingham hip resurfacing. This is not a standard procedure. It involves placing a cobalt-chromium metal cap over the femoral head, the ball of the hip joint, and a metal cup into the acetabulum, the socket. It is a major surgical intervention. For a recreational athlete, the recovery is measured in months. For an elite professional tennis player attempting to return to singles competition at the highest level, there was no precedent, none. Bob Bryan, the doubles specialist, had undergone the same procedure in August 2018 and returned to doubles play. That was the only data point available. Singles tennis, with its lateral movement, its explosive direction changes, its thousands of repetitions per match, that was uncharted territory. Murray's surgeon said publicly that a return to professional tennis was unlikely. Not impossible, unlikely. That word matters. Remember it. Australian Open 2019, first round. Roberto Bautista Agut. Murray loses 6-4, 6-4, 6-7, 6-7, 6-2. The scoreline doesn't tell the story. The 5th set does. By the 5th set, Murray had been on court for nearly 4 hours. Every movement was costing him something he couldn't get back. He won the 3rd and 4th sets in tiebreaks, refusing to let it end, before the hip finally dictated the outcome in the 5th. When the match ended, he stopped at the baseline, raised his racket. The crowd gave him a standing ovation that lasted minutes. Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, his rivals, the men who defined his era, sent on-court video tributes. The Big Three, paying respect to the man who pushed them harder than anyone else in their generation. Then came the press conference. Tears, no composure, no media management. I cannot keep doing this. I needed to have an end point. And then the 7 words. Maybe I'll see you again. I'll do everything possible to try. If I want to go again, I'll need to have a big operation where there are no guarantees I will be able to come back from. I will give my best shot." That press conference was not a retirement speech. It was a mission statement delivered by a man who wasn't sure he could complete the mission. 14 days after Melbourne, January 28, 2019. Murray goes under the knife. Birmingham hip resurfacing. Cobalt-chromium metal cap on the femoral head. Metal cup in the acetabulum. He posts on Instagram afterward, "I now have a metal hip." 4 words. No drama. Just fact. His surgeon's public assessment: unlikely to return to professional tennis. Think about what that means for a moment. The man who performed the surgery, who knows exactly what was done, who understands the anatomy, who has the data, says the probability of return is low. Murray had heard this. He posted on Instagram anyway. The procedure itself was experimental in the context of elite singles tennis. Bob Bryan's return to doubles in August 2018 was the only comparable case, and doubles tennis places fundamentally different demands on the hip than singles. In singles, you cover the entire court alone. You change direction hundreds of times per match. You serve, a rotational movement that loads the hip under explosive force. You play best of 5 sets at Grand Slams. No elite singles player had returned from this surgery. Murray was attempting to be the first. 5 months. That is how long it took before Murray could compete again. But the timeline understates the difficulty. The first phase wasn't training. It was learning to walk again. When a joint deteriorates over years, the surrounding muscles compensate. They develop patterns, inefficient, protective patterns, designed to reduce load on the damaged area. After surgery, those compensation patterns have to be unlearned. The muscles that atrophied have to be rebuilt. The movement patterns that a professional athlete spent decades ingraining have to be reset. This is not rehabilitation in the conventional sense. This is reconstruction. In the early weeks, the work was not a tennis racket in hand. It was a physio table, resistance bands, and the basic mechanics of putting one foot in front of the other without compensating. Murray had spent so long protecting that hip, unconsciously shifting weight, adjusting his gait, favoring his left side, that his body had essentially forgotten what normal movement felt like. His team described sessions where the goal was simply to walk across a room with correct posture, not to sprint, not to serve, to walk. Then came the pool work, low-impact movement to rebuild range of motion before the joint could tolerate full weight-bearing load. Then stationary bike. Then court movement drills at reduced intensity. Then hitting. Then match play. Each phase had a gate. You only moved to the next one when the previous one produced zero pain response. His coaches, his team, his family, nobody knew if it would work. What they observed, according to those close to the process, was a man who showed up every single day and did exactly what was asked of him. No shortcuts, no impatience, just the work. Murray didn't know if it would work either. What he knew was the surgeon's word, unlikely. And he decided that unlikely was not the same as impossible. June 2019, Queen's Club, London. 5 months after surgery. 5 months after the surgeon said unlikely. Andy Murray walks onto a grass court and plays doubles tennis. His partner, Feliciano Lopez. The result? They win the title. After the match, Murray speaks to the press. No tears this time. Something different. "I just won the doubles here with Feli with a metal hip. It's mental, really. My hip felt great. No pain." No pain. For a man who had spent years waking up at 3 a.m. because the pain wouldn't let him sleep, those 3 words carry a weight that is difficult to overstate. No pain. But doubles was the proof of concept. Singles was the actual goal. October 2019, Antwerp, Belgium, the European Open. Murray enters the singles draw. He defeats Stan Wawrinka, a 3-time Grand Slam champion, 3-6, 6-4, 6-4. First ATP singles title since 2017. First singles title with a metal hip. First singles title that the surgeon said was unlikely to ever happen. The Antwerp title was not a one-match anomaly. Through 2021 and 2022, Murray accumulated a string of victories over top 10 players, not upsets, patterns. In August 2021, at the Western and Southern Open in Cincinnati, Murray defeated Alexander Zverev, then ranked number 7 in the world, for his highest-ranked win since the 2016 ATP Finals. In June 2022, at the Stuttgart Open, Murray defeated Stefanos Tsitsipas, then ranked in the top 5 in the quarterfinals. It was his first victory over a top 5 opponent in 6 years. He went on to reach the final, where he lost to Berrettini. But the result against Tsitsipas was the clearest signal yet that the metal hip was not a limitation. It was a footnote. By the end of 2022, he had returned to the top 50 in the world rankings, the first time since 2018. Then came Australian Open 2023. He then defeats Thanasi Kokkinakis in a match that finishes in the early hours of the morning, one of the longest and most dramatic matches in recent Australian Open history. The conventional wisdom in 2019 was that Murray's career was over. The data through 2023 said otherwise. Paris 2024. The Olympic Games. Murray enters the men's doubles draw alongside Dan Evans. He is 37 years old. He has a metal hip. He is 5 years removed from the press conference in Melbourne where he said 7 words that nobody fully believed. He plays his final professional match at the Olympics. And when it ends, he walks off the court in Paris for the last time. Not carried, not limping, not in tears at a press conference announcing he can no longer continue. He walks off on his own terms. He retires as the only player in the history of professional tennis to win 2 Olympic singles gold medals. 5 years after "maybe I'll see you again," he had seen them again. Here is what Andy Murray's story actually teaches us, and it is not about tennis. In January 2019, the medical consensus was unlikely. The physical evidence supported that consensus: a failed surgery, a deteriorating joint, no precedent for singles return. Murray did not argue with the consensus. He did not dismiss the surgeon's assessment. He acknowledged it, and then decided that his definition of unlikely included a path forward. The lesson is not "believe in yourself and anything is possible." That is not what happened here. What happened is more specific and more useful. Murray identified the one remaining option, a high-risk surgery with no guarantee, and he committed to it completely. He rebuilt from zero. He accepted doubles before singles. He accepted Antwerp before Wimbledon. He accepted the top 50 before the top 10. He did not demand the full outcome immediately. He took every partial victory as evidence that the next step was possible. That is not inspiration. That is strategy. And it is the reason that 5 years after Melbourne, he was still on a tennis court at the Olympics, retiring on his own terms. If Murray's story hit you the way it hit us, a man who said goodbye in tears and came back with metal inside his body, then you already know what this channel is. We find the real story underneath the scoreboard. Subscribe to KT Tennis so you don't miss the next one. Here is the question I want you to answer. In 2019, his surgeon said it was unlikely he would ever return to professional tennis. 5 years later, he retired on his own terms at the Olympics. Do you think Andy Murray's comeback is the greatest in tennis history? Or is there someone who came back from further? Drop your answer below.